Mike Bracco of thenextweb.com, and I'm here today with Andrew Warner of Mixergy. That's mixergy.com. And I just wanted to talk about Andrew, talk about what he's done with Mixergy, a little bit of his background, pretty successful entrepreneur in his own right. But really what brought me to Andrew and Mixergy was a great website which offers amazing resources for entrepreneurs, a resource that I've become to love online. And basically, Andrew, if you probably can give a 30-second pitch more better than I can, what is Mixergy? What do you do at the site?
Sure. Well, what we do is we bring successful entrepreneurs who've built successful internet companies to come and talk to newer entrepreneurs about how they did it, and talk about what the challenges were along the way, where the ideas for their business came from, and maybe even some of the things that they ordinarily wouldn't talk about in public. They come in and they talk to us about things like how they got the first things like. We had a couple of entrepreneurs come in and talk about how they spammed to build up an audience in the early days, or some other entrepreneurs talk about how they brought in revenue when times were really tough and how they turned a struggling company around. So it's really frank conversations with entrepreneurs.
Now, just to backtrack a little bit, you're a very successful entrepreneur in your own right. Give us a little background on your business and what you had done and how that led to Mixergy.
Sure. When I graduated from college, my kid brother and I started an internet company that we called Bradford and Reed. And by now I think people know the story behind Bradford and Reed. It was an internet greeting card company, but we called it Bradford and Reed because I was determined to sell as much advertising as I could, and I knew that if I called myself some other .com, nobody would take my calls, and I couldn't, make the pitch to sell them advertising on our sites. So instead I said, we're Bradford and Reed, and that way when I called up, everyone was a little worried that maybe I was calling from a law firm and they were in trouble, or maybe I was calling from an investment company and they had an opportunity, but one way or the other they were going to take our calls. And so we sold, thanks to determination and tactics like that, we ended up selling over $30 million a year in advertising at Bradford and Reed, and it was all essentially an ad-based business. Mostly it was greeting cards, but we got into other businesses like online contests. Newsletters were also very big for us. And so the reason that led to Mixergy is because I remember at my toughest times I was looking for some kind of help. And so I went out to seminars and I read all those self-improvement books, and all these guys had rah-rah pitches that all sounded great. Love everybody, the world is terrific, pep yourself every morning by saying that you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And I was desperate enough, so I'd wake up every morning, and I think I even wrote on my mirror some kind of affirmation because I was desperate, and all that was BS. And I realized it was BS as I built up my business and I saw what it really took to build a successful company. And I said, what if we didn't have these charlatans teaching us entrepreneurs how to build a business? What if it was successful entrepreneurs who sat down with us and said, look, here's what it takes. And that's the idea behind Mixergy. We have real entrepreneurs who built real businesses, not charlatans talking about how they did it and teaching what they learned along the way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love about Mixergy is sort of the anecdotes. I think, for me at least, I think anecdotes are kind of the best way to learn, just because you're not reading the 5 steps to this or the 10 steps to that. And I found it really interesting. You mentioned kind of that was the driving force on the way. The format of Mixergy was sort of the anecdotes and how that affected you in your business. And you mentioned you're a big fan of Ted Turner and some of the stuff that he had done building his empire. And actually, I heard a story about you and your J. Crew incident to fund your business. Talk about just the value of anecdotes and how that comes into play with Mixergy.
Sure. When I was a kid, all I did was dream of being an entrepreneur, dream of building a business, and I would sit and read stories of other entrepreneurs, and eventually those stories, those anything can happen type anecdotes, anything can happen if you find a way, and if you come up with some clever solution, you can make anything happen. Those anecdotes stuck in my head. Before I get into the J. Crew example, let me talk about Ted Turner. He's someone that I read a lot about. And Ted Turner would do these crazy things to get attention, to sell ads, to get people who were pissed off at him to to learn to like him and to work with him, actually. And so there are these stories of him walking into somebody's office and kissing their shoes and saying to big businessman, please do business with me, or walking into a potential advertiser back when he was just in the billboard business and jumping up on their table and saying, what do I have to do to sell you advertising? And there's stories of him when he bought the Braves, where he would do ostrich races, or he would do competitions to see who can move a baseball further with their chin, and his chin was all scuffed up for a long time after that. Basically, you'd hear these stories of an entrepreneur who says, I've got to make this happen. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And some other people might think that what I'm doing is outrageous, but this is what I got to do. And eventually you start to realize being outrageous is okay. If it sounds a little crazy to other people, it's fine, because this is what entrepreneurs do. And so those stories stuck in my head, and when it was time for me to build a business, I said, well, I did things that other people would think are outrageous. Like you mentioned J. Crew. I did not have any money when I started my business. I was desperate for money. But I was even more desperate to start a business. So I said, where can I get cash? Where can I get cash? And I remember feeling really sorry for myself, because in school, in order to try to get dates in college, I went and I bought J. Crew clothes. J. Crew was really hot at the time. And it was just hundreds of dollars in clothes. Today, hundreds of dollars in clothes is nothing. But hundreds of dollars in clothes, maybe even a couple of thousand, I forget at this point. And I felt really sorry for myself for buying them. And then I looked at one of their catalogs, and I saw on the back that they had a lifetime refund policy. You can wear your clothes and you could still return them if you're ever unhappy with them. So I called up the woman at J. Crew and I said, can I really return these clothes? I bought them over a year ago. And the lady says, well, yeah, you can. I said, but I wore them the whole time. She goes, yeah, that's our policy. I go, but I wore them on the New York subway. She goes, that's our policy, sir. So I boxed them all up and I returned it to them, and sure enough, within a couple of weeks, they sent me a check for a refund for all my clothes, and that's what we used to start our business. Now, there are lots of stories like that we needed. There are lots of ideas like that we needed to come up with just to build a business in the early days. Let me give you another one along the same lines. We could not afford computers. At the time, you needed to have servers to run your website. You needed to have more than just these dinky computers that we had when we were in school, my kid brother and I. And we said, how do we buy computers? Well, turns out Staples at the time had a 90-day return policy. So I called up Staples and I said, if I buy your computer today and I use it every day for 89 days, can I return it on the 90th day? And one goes, yeah, that's our policy. I said, I'm actually going to use it every day as my computer. I'm going to return it at 90 days. He goes, that's our policy. So I said, all right, I'll take 6. Sure enough, Staples had a next day delivery plan. Next day, I had 6 computers at my house. In fact, at my parents' house. I couldn't even afford to live on my own at the time. I was a college graduate who couldn't even afford his own place. We had 6 computers, and that's what Michael and I used to build our business. That's what we ran our sites on. You're talking about, at the time, you needed your own server. You couldn't just go and install WordPress or use WordPress.com for free. That's what it took. Now, to any of my friends, that seemed a little outrageous. Many of my friends said, look at you. You're so desperate you can't even start a business. You can't even afford computers. Why don't you go and get a job instead? To them, it seemed outrageous because they didn't have the stories that I grew up with. They didn't hear how other entrepreneurs did it. They didn't understand what I understood. They just had a different frame of reference. To them, what you do is you go and you get great grades in school, and then you go and you get a job, and then you get a better job, and then you get a better job, and maybe later on, maybe after fantasizing for years about being an entrepreneur, maybe at that point you go and you build a business. To me, it was always, you have an idea, you want to make it happen, you feel passionate about it, find a way to make it happen right now. And so that's the way we built up the business. Now, you show me one self-help book that has ideas like that has ideas like the ones that Ted Turner used, or real-life situations like I experienced in business, and then I'll give it a little more consideration. What I see for the most part is do the right thing, love everybody, but really, love everyone is great, but it's not going to make my business grow.
Right. Well, in many ways, I mean, entrepreneurship is sort of an against the grain type mentality and attitude. So in some ways, it's about breaking the rules. So I think, definitely.
Yeah, and let me tell you this. It's about breaking the rules, and a lot of times people imagine there are rules that aren't really there. So before they start. They'll go and they'll hire infinite lawyers, or they'll look for lawyers, and they'll look for patents, and they'll look for everything before they even get started. They're just get started and then figure it out. Now, here's what we've seen. I had an entrepreneur, the guy who founded MetroLyrics.com. I asked him, when you started a lyric website, did you get permission from the record labels, from the industry, from the musicians, from anybody at all to put lyrics on your website? He goes, no, I didn't. I said, where'd you get those lyrics? You didn't type them yourself. He goes, well, I created a program that scraped the internet and got me the lyrics. I said, did you ask those websites for permission to scrape their lyrics? He goes, no, I didn't. Basically, what you're seeing is the guy just built it, and then he figured out how to do it right. Then he started contacting the music, the right people at the music industry, and that's what we keep seeing over and over from entrepreneurs. And not just so you think that it's not just the entrepreneurs you never heard of and the websites that you may not be that familiar with. I also did an interview with Matt Mullenweg, the founder of Automattic and the co-founder of WordPress. One of the top sites online is WordPress.com, and one of the biggest blogging platforms online is WordPress. I asked him how he got traffic in the early days, how he promoted what he created in the early days. And we talked, and basically he was commenting on people's blogs. And if you listen to that interview, you'll hear him at one point say, yeah, some of the ideas, some of the things that we did now, some of the things that we did at the time would seem spammy today. But you know what? He did it. He had to build up a site. Now, he's not holding a gun up to anyone's head. You're just experimenting. You're trying new things.
Now, you've had a chance to interview who's who of the business, the internet entrepreneur world. Now, what are some of your favorite interviews that favorite stories that you've come across during your interviews?
Mm-hmm. My favorite stories are the ones that people hate for me to do. Everybody loves for me to do interviews with entrepreneurs who are big successes. If I can put $0 to millions of dollars on the title of a post when I do an interview, I know I'll get a lot of traffic. The interviews that people don't want me to do, the interviews that I get a lot of flack for, are the ones with entrepreneurs who fail. People say, well, why do you want to do these interviews? This person is a failure himself. They blame the entrepreneur. I'll tell you why. If you just study successful people, you walk away with this understanding that all it takes to succeed is a desire to succeed. All it takes to succeed is hard work. All it takes to succeed is passion. And if you listen to the self-improvement guys, that's all they tell you, You have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to love what you're doing. When you interview failed entrepreneurs, guys who built companies that failed, not that they're failures, but their companies were failures, you find that they had just as much passion as the successes. You find that they put in just as much hard work as the successful entrepreneurs. In fact, very often even more hard work. So you can't say that what separates the successes from the failures is the passion or the hard work or the loving what you do. You have to dig deeper and find something that's a little bit more nuanced. You have to dig deeper and find something that's a little bit less universally true, which is sometimes you don't want to listen to all of your customers. I did an interview with an entrepreneur who started a company, and he was told that he was supposed to listen and love his audience and love his customers and listen to what they want and build it up, right? He did. He was building a health site. One of his customers said, why don't we do health, you guys should do health for pets. So he did healthy food for pets. And then you should do, I think he did I think he did Viagra type, herbal Viagra, because people were asking for it. And then he got into herbal Viagra for your dog, or whatever it is, Basically, whatever people wanted, he gave them. And he realized that he was giving them too much, and he was losing his focus. So if you listen to that interview, and at the same time you listen to someone else who says, listen to your customers, somewhere in between is a more nuanced way to be. Somewhere in between is a more reasonable way to build your business, and that's what we're after here.
Now, what is your end game with Mixergy? What is your, you've been doing these interviews for a while. I really enjoyed them, but what is your sort of end vision of Mixergy?
You know what? A large part of my end vision, to be honest with you, is selfish. I want to leave a legacy. I don't want to die and be a nobody. As I was building up Bradford and Reed, we were bringing in lots of money, but nobody knew who we were. I wasn't really having an impact on the world. If I died at the end of that run, I would have had a good run myself. I would have been happy myself, but I would have been completely forgotten. I don't want to be completely forgotten. I want to do something that I want to be remembered. I want to have some kind of immortality. And The way that I'm going to do it is by leaving ideas out there that are new. The way that I'm going to do it is by creating entrepreneurs. The way that I'm going to do it is by creating this new way of studying success, this new way of becoming successful, which isn't as easy as 4 ways to succeed, which isn't as easy as the 7 habits of highly effective people. It's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Now, in terms of, you mentioned some of the books and things like that. What do you have any favorite books and resources that you point people to?
I have a lot that I love, but there isn't any one that I say if you do this, you're going to be... there isn't one that I would call the Bible of business. But you know what I found? That... Well, what is it? I wonder, did Stephen Covey, he's got a business, right? Franklin Covey, it's a publicly traded company. We've got a few people who are watching us live. Check it out. Is Franklin Covey profitable? Here's a guy who's teaching everybody else how to run their business. How profitable is his business? Let's check that out. I got to check that out after this interview. Let's see. Will Lem, if you're watching us live right now, can you check it out and tell us? What I found is I've read biographies of successful people who've left their marks on the world, is that they just keep reading. They just keep learning. They never stop. Warren Buffett is the most successful investor in the world, maybe even the most successful investor in history. You know what? He still reads books. He still reads about other entrepreneurs. He'll still hear a Charlie Rose interview that he loves so much that he passes on to Bill Gates. So to me, there isn't any one thing that I would pass on. It would just be the love, the curiosity, the love of learning and curiosity, infinite curiosity.
Now, do you see yourself, I mean, you're talking to entrepreneurs every day, you're talking about ideas. You must have the it sometimes, whether it's an idea or a business idea that maybe you want to go after. Has that crossed your mind? Get back
By
in?
the way, I see Will Lamb, who's watching us live, is saying he's going to go check it out. Good. I'm curious to see, Will, what you come up with. Thank you. Do I have any ideas for businesses that I want to get involved with? I got a problem. Here's my problem. I am single-mindedly focused. I can't do 2 things at once. I can't, literally people who walk around with Starbucks in their hands, they drink as they walk. I have to stop and I have to drink. It's that way. It's even more than that. When I was starting my own business, I couldn't do what the guys over at 37 Signals do, which is start my own business while working for someone else. To me, it's just, I'm going to work on my own business all day long, or I'm going to go work for someone else all day long, but I can't be half-assed about it. I can't do one thing in the morning and another thing at night. I've got to obsess 24 hours a day on one thing. When I sold the business and I decided I wanted to, live a little bit, I didn't live a little bit. I didn't go get another job or start another business then go live at night. I said, no, what I really would like to do is travel. So I traveled exclusively, and all I did was walk around and maybe read books if I was in a different city. When I wanted to date, I was a big freaking nerd. I talk about this a lot here in the interviews on Mixergy. I was a big nerd. That's part of my drive to build a business was so that I can overcome that nerdiness. And you know what? Another part is I couldn't date when I was in school. I said, if I make money, then I'll be able to go out there and date. And many people in the self-help world, many people who are smarter than me will tell you, no, you have to go and discover yourself. Well, by the way, the only way you have time, the energy to go on meditation retreats and whatever else it takes to discover yourself is if you have enough money in the bank to go do it. So I went off and I did that, and I single-mindedly dated. I said my goal every day, every 6 out of 7 days is to go out there and date. And I'm not going to come home at 10 o'clock because it's late. I'm going to stay out as late as the night takes me. And if there's a whole other city that I'm going to because I'm out with friends and they decide they want to go to another city, I'm going to go over there. So all that to say that whatever I do exclusively, and I try not to do anything else. And that's the way I am on Mixergy. I do just these interviews. And believe me, it takes a long time to nail these guys. I mean, not to nail them, but to go and nail down some of these interviews. A lot of these people who I interview have got businesses to run. They've got things going on in their lives. They don't return my emails right away. It takes a little back and forth before they feel comfortable doing an interview with me. A lot of them never do interviews at all, and they come here and they do their first interviews, and they're a little nervous about it.
Yeah, so you're knocking out almost interviews every day, I see. Is it just you, or do you have people you're working with? What's the behind the scenes?
The reason that I could do so many interviews is there are a few reasons. First of all, the audience is tremendously helpful now. I exhausted my Rolodex of entrepreneurs a little while ago, but the audience now is helping me, and past interviewees are helping me. So I keep getting emails from people saying, "Hey, my boss is terrific. This is how much money he's making. I think you should interview him." Or I get an email saying from another a past guest, like I told you about the founder of Metro Lyrics. I didn't know anything about Metro Lyrics. I didn't know how successful they were. But Matt Miskowitz, the founder of SitePoint, emailed me and he said you should interview him, and he's connected me. So that's how I'm finding all these interviewees. The reason that I could do so many of these interviews is because I'm here in Buenos Aires. I found that when you change your environment, your whole attitude changes, your whole ability to focus changes. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching us now have had that experience, that you work in an office and things get a little bit monotonous and you get distracted by other people in the office, and you go off to a coffee shop or to a quiet place somewhere with your computer and you find that you get a lot more done. To me, moving to Buenos Aires is like that. I get up every day, I come out here, I get my yerba mate, where is that, this high-powered energy drink that everybody drinks out here, and I start banging on doors and seeing if I could get some interviews.
Great. Well, I know you get a run. You get another interview shortly, but I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time. As I said, you've been a great inspiration for me and resource